I think, as you can tell by the description of the video, I think we need to have a chat. So I'll join you in the filter shed. Parasites. Not in this pond, but in my main pond. So I wanted to run you through everything what's going on. Not the normal starts to all of my videos, but I wanted to do something a little bit different. In this hobby of keeping fish or keeping koi, you've got to expect at some stage that there's going to be an issue or a problem or something may go wrong. And anytime you think there's a problem or an issue, as a lot of koi keepers know, you've got to run down through your checks. I'm going to run down through my water quality in the main pond, show you what it's looking like, show you where I am, and show you why I think I've got an issue, and then tell you what issue that is. With that being said, hopefully you can like the video for me. Well, let's just get on to it, step by step, stage at a time, to hopefully help other koi keepers out to identify and notice problems before the problems get too bad and you can't really get rid of the issues that you've got. But I'm the Koi Whisperer, so we'll be able to sort this out. As a lot of you know, I'm a YouTuber. I make content on a regular basis, and I do a hell of a lot of traveling. And looking at the fish at the moment, most people would be saying or looking through or thinking to themselves that there's not really an issue. Well, for me personally, looking at the fish, I've noticed a few issues, especially since I've been back from recent trips that I've been on, visiting different dealerships, visiting how they make Burton's drum filters. When you spent time away from your pond, you don't get to notice all of these things. My boy come out in the garden and he basically said, "Dad, you got a few fish sat on the bottom of the pond, clamped up, and they're not moving or doing anything." The people that don't know, just to give people a bit of information, people may be new to the hobby, so there's always signs and indications if there's an issue. Some of the normal symptoms are fish jumping out of the pond. Some of the fish sort of symptoms are sat down at the very bottom of the pond, not moving, and just sat there with their fins out or clamped inwards, generally in a pond corner, not moving whatsoever. But the most noticeable symbol is when a fish swims along the pond and then flicks along the pond window or the bottom drain or whatever's in the pond, sort of like what me or you would do, is if you had an itch, you would give yourself a bit of an itch or an irritation. Well, a fish haven't got hands, so the way that they get rid of their irritation by a parasite or something in their gills or something wrong with the water is that they swim and then they bosh themselves out of the pond or on something in the pond. A pond wall, the bottom drain, or the pond window. Little bit of a story. My son rang me up. He said, "Dad, all the fish are on the bottom of the pond." I come home last night. First thing I did was walk out in the garden and I had 4 fish sat in this bottom corner, not moving. Just a little bit of a brief guide as well. I haven't added anything to this pond. I haven't changed anything to the pond. The only thing that I have changed, and it's been over 4 weeks ago now, is the fish food. I haven't changed nothing else whatsoever. I think we better start with the water because there's always stages to go by, step-by-step information of protocols to check, and generally checking the water is my first protocol, because if there's something wrong with the water, then there's something wrong with the fish, because keeping koi, we don't actually keep koi, we keep the water. So that being said, I'll run you through the test kits, but yeah, keeping koi is supposed to be relaxing. One thing I want to make completely clear, this is not a sales video, this is not a promotional video, this is a video of me trying to help other koi keepers. You, if you're watching this video because you're in need of an issue or a problem yourself, but me personally running through what I do. So on the market of water testing, there is loads of different test kits available. I've had pretty much every single one of them, all at different price ranges, and they pretty much all give you the same results. That being said, the only thing I will say is that sometimes if you've only ever got one test kit, you're always ever relying on that one test kit as a result, what that reading gives you by having one test kit. So if you have got 2, you can cross-reference to make sure that the test kit that you're using is actually giving you the right results that you're looking for. That being said, we're actually going to be using the test kit today with the cheapest test kit I've found on the market. One vital bit of information that anyone that does keep koi, this is the first stage of checking if you've got an issue, or if you think you've got an issue, or if you need help or guidance by other people in the industry. Because without knowing what your water quality is, anyone that's trying to give you help or advice, it's pretty much impossible until they know your readings of what your water quality is. So that being said, we're going to run down through this test kit to start with. This is what I do, and it's what I recommend you do. So 2 cups, and you want to be doing 2 tests. You want to be testing the pond water, and then you also want to be testing the water that is feeding your pond at the same time. So the trickle in, or whenever you do a water change, that water that you're putting in, you want to test both. Because if there's something wrong with the water that you're putting into your pond, you know that's the issue. But if you know there's something wrong with the water that's in your pond, you know that's the issue. So I'll take a test from here and a test from over there. The water that I've got feeding my pond, it's just on the side of the pond, and it's what you call a trickle in, trickle out. So that's running 24/7, 7 days a week. So before I do the test, the reason behind checking the water that's feeding your pond, whether that's once a week or 24/7 like what I do myself personally, is because you also need to be checking for the chlorine that's running into the pond. You can do that by using one of these hanometers, and then that will test you if you're adding chlorine to the pond water. I keep that separate, but to start with, put you on a bit of a time lapse, and I'm going to be testing you the actual pond water itself, running you through all of the different tests that we're testing for: ammonia, pH, nitrite, nitrate and GH. But because I live in a soft water area, the KH to me is probably the most important, KH and pH, but there's also other ways that I test for that as well. I monitor my pond 24/7 because I do live in a soft water area, and this Blue Lab Guardian actually gives you an exact reading of your pH, your temperature and your TDS at all times.
There was once a day that I would pray for you. I'd go and misbehave just so you'd notice too. Sneaking looks up and down from across the room.
So this is just finishing counting down, and I'll show you the rest of the results. So there we have it, and this is what's feeding the pond from the trickle in, what runs 24/7. So that's coming in at 0.8. The pond water itself, with all of the other tests that I've done, are absolutely perfect. And the way you get your results with any test kit, especially with the colour reading test kits, these test kits come with a chart and they tell you exactly what you have to do, step-by-step instructions, and then you match your colour of the water with the green tick is where you want it to be. No ammonia, no nitrate, no nitrite, pH of 7, KH of 2 and GH of 6. Without running those tests that you've just seen, without having that test kit, I wouldn't know that I'd be putting chlorine to the pond. And any pond, any koi pond, should have 0 chlorine in the water at all times. I know I'm going to have to change the big blue, but for the people that don't know what a big blue is, I'm going to show you that now, but I don't think that's the main issue what's causing me the problems. So I'll show you the blue and then I'll show you my next steps. Right then, so the big blue. The reason why I'm showing you this is because there's different ways of taking the chlorine out to your pond before it goes in your pond. But these systems need to be monitored, and they also need to be kept an eye on when they need to be replaced. Over the years of me keeping a big blue, I have noticed that sometimes, and some people might agree with me, anyone that keeps water can track. So these big blues hold activated carbon, and if they've been left in a still position for a long time, what you can find with these big blues, and it's a little tip for a lot of people, is instead of running the water through the same way all of the time, spin it round and put it on a bit of a back flush, just so you move all of the activated carbon that holds inside of the big blues, and then fire it back up and then redo a test, because sometimes the water will track up through and it won't actually be taking the chlorine out because the water's found a gap and an easy way to come out of the system without the system actually doing the job it needs to do. Real quick demonstration. So the water comes from the main source straight from my water company here, but it comes from here. Then it runs through a 3-stage pre-filter. The reason why I use this is because I bought this in the early stages of koi keeping before I purchased the Big Blue, and I decided to keep this in place, replace the cartridge blocks which is inside the first 3 stages, and use this as a bit of a pre-filter before it goes into the Big Blue. And the main reason is because these cartridge blocks are a lot cheaper to replace than what the carbon that's inside of the Big Blue is. And there's different types of carbon that you need depending on the different places where you live in the world. That yibbity yabbity being said, I'm going to put this on a backwash, do another test. It's all about checklist, checklist, checklist to work out what the problem is, what the issue is, and working out how to fix that issue. So the next step that I take is by doing a scrape. For the people that don't know what a scrape is, fish can hold parasites on their mucus, on their skin, on the body of the fish, on the gills of the fish. Parasites that you can't be seen with the naked eye. So the only way of identifying them is by using one of these bits of equipment. There's loads of different types on the market at very different price ranges. I currently have 2, just for a bit of backup. I bought this one second hand off eBay, and I bought this one brand new. I actually prefer to use this one, which you look down the microscope, you get a clear indication of what parasite you're looking at. I'll run you through all that in a minute. Some people are a little bit put off by this, but it's the only true way of knowing what parasite that you may or may not have, because every single parasite that you've got, different medications work better, and it's always good point to know exactly what parasite you've got instead of guessing, so then you can treat that parasite with the right medication. That being said, well, time to get a fish out because we need to do a scrape. These things are certainly not cheap, but if you're spending a lot of money on your fish and your fish die, there's no point buying any more fish until you buy one of these. So yeah, I need to get the net out and the blue tub and this sock net. But one thing's for sure, don't think you need to be put off by the hobby and you think you need to buy all of this stuff. It just helps. It's more bits of equipment that's very handy. It doesn't have to be blue, and it doesn't have to be from Japan. And as long as it's a net that you use for the same pond at all times, and if you don't, that you sterilise it like I do. If you've got a couple of ponds and you're using the same equipment, as long as you sterilise it before you put it into another pond, then it's safe to use. But if you don't, you've got the chance of spreading whatever's in one pond goes in the other pond. But I do apologise if you can hear the seagulls today. I do keep telling Stephen to shut up, but you know how it is. That being said, let's get a fish out and I'll show you how to do this next stage. So when it comes to this stage, you basically just got to pick one of the fish that you think are showing the signs or symptoms of the most stress or the reasons why you're getting that fish out. Having the right gear and equipment certainly makes it easy, certainly makes it more enjoyable for you and the fish. It's just about taking your time, no rush, and causing as less stress as possible to the fish that you want to get out. So I've got one in mind that I want to get out. I always start by trying to do everything inside of the pond. So hopefully we don't have to use the sock net to get the fish out of the pond altogether. So if we can do what we want to do in the pond, that's what we're going to do. But I'm going to try my best to show you how to do it on camera without causing any stress to the fish. So my first protocol is to put the blue tub at one end of the pond where the fish are up the other end of the pond, so straight away they don't really know what's going on. I've got a fish in mind that I'm after. I just go straight into the pond, and whenever you're netting them, just take your time and keep their head towards the top of the net. So when you're bringing them back slowly, if they do decide to jump, they jump towards the net itself, if that makes sense, or try your very best to do it that way. So it's just controlling the fish, take your time, and then sliding the net towards the bowl, dip the bowl underneath the pond so you can guide the fish into the bowl, just like so, no stress, no hassle. Lift the bowl up slightly, then just balance the bowl up level again, and I'll bring you over here to show you the next part. So once you have the fish in the bowl, It doesn't have to be one of your prized collections. You just have to get a fish that have shown a few signs and symptoms. So this fish has been currently sat on the bottom of the pond, sat in the pond corner, and I definitely need to check out what's going on. So there's certain ways that you can do that, and all you need is a normal card. It doesn't have to be a PETS card, but a credit card or any sort of card of that material. And ideally what you want to be doing is just taking a little bit of a scrape down one side of the fish, and you can see this mucus on the end of the card we're going to transfer onto a microscope by putting it onto a slide. But this fish is now ready to go back, and the same way as we got it out is the same way we'll put it back. So we just dip the blue tub into the pond, slowly sink it, and wait until the fish decides to swim away. And there is zero stress for that fish. Well, come on then, let me show you this next part of how to put this on a slide. Right then, I do apologise if the pumps and the air pumps are a little bit noisy, but I have got my microscope on, not my microscope, my microphone, and I'm trying my best. So when I keep reverting back to slides, that's the slides and that's the cover slips. So what we got to do is transfer this bit of mucus onto a bit of glass slide and then put a cover slip on the top. The way that I like to do it is just hold on to the card itself, scrape the mucus down one side, put as much as that mucus. Let me get you up to the camera so you can see. Can you see that mucus on the slide there, dead in the centre? Well, what I like to do is add 1 drop of water to that, and the way that I do that, it just helps identify if you've got a parasite. I always find a tiny little bit of water on the slide itself certainly helps spread out the mucus there. So I put a little bit of a dip into my skimmer, I let 1 drop come off of my finger. I'll use the cover slip that I've got out. I'll show you again. And I'll just put it dead centre onto the mucus. And as you can see it there, just like so, we're ready to rock and roll. We need to put it onto there now. A lot of people don't want to find parasites, but if you've got an issue or a problem in the pond, ideally at this stage, you want to find a parasite, because then you know that's what the issue is to start with. But as a basic guideline, these microscopes come with different magnification. I always recommend people to start off at 100 magnification. That will find pretty much every parasite that you're looking for. What I also like to do is get the lighting correct on these microscopes, and it's all about playing around with them. So it's all about zooming in, getting the right light, getting the right focus, having the mucus on the slide. Sometimes it's worth doing a couple fish if you don't find anything, but ideally I'm looking for a parasite, and then I know what treatment to use for that specific parasite that I find. What I've just found here is not good news, but in one way it is good news, because now I know what I've got. If you've got a parasite like what I've got, it will come up straight away. I've got trichodina, and if you don't know what trichodina is, it looks like a little circle, a little plate, like a spinning saucer, and it's just going round and round and round. So yeah, one thing's for sure, and I want to make it as clear as I possibly can. Guess treatments and also overdosing and not knowing the exact gallonage in your pond. Some of the stuff that I may or may not say, this is stuff that I do myself personally. Treatments is a very, very difficult subject to talk about, for the pure fact of unless you can identify exactly what you've got, exactly how many gallons that you've got, different ways of treating a koi pond is a complete different opinion by many, many koi keepers in the hobby. When you first get an issue or a problem, there is no one treatment fixes all. When you first start the hobby, it gets very confusing, and what a lot of people do, they just go into their local koi shop or their local pet shop or garden centre, and they buy a treatment that they think they're going to put into their pond, and this magical treatment is going to solve all of their issues. Well, I can guarantee you that is not the case, and hopefully a lot of people agree with me. Every single bottle that you pick up, no matter what it's from, a company of NT Labs, Kasuri, a Fluke Sove Plus on the end, every single bottle will say stuff like anti-parasite and fungus treatment, FMG mixture, it treats white spot, trichodina, costia and chilidynia. Well, I've found over the years there's certain treatments target certain parasites a lot better than others. Obviously this is another video all in itself. I've got trichodina, so I've always found over the years the only treatment for trichodina, the only thing that will ever kill trichodina, which I've tried and tested in the past with all of these different medications, is a treatment called potassium permanganate. In the industry, it's well known as a treatment called PP. Well, a lot of people are put off by using this treatment because it can kill your fish, alongside with every other treatment here if it's put into your pond with a too high a dose rate where you don't know the exact gallonage or literage of your pond. You can get it in liquid form, diluted, which I use that for a quick easy mix if I'm doing a PP dip. It is certainly stronger and better if you use the crystals. The downside with it, when you read the information or the instructions with any of these treatments that I'm talking about, it gets very, very confusing. That's also confusing with temperature related, how many gallons that you've got, if you actually work out the right amount of grams to what you need to use. So I'll run you through how I use this stuff, but one thing's for sure, I never ever recommend anyone use PP without a treatment called hydrogen peroxide. So for the people that are new to the hobby, if you overdose on the PP, or if your fish show signs of stress, of coming up to the top, gasping, hitting into the pond wall, then you know those fish have been in that water for far too long, and you can actually neutralise it. Doesn't have to be neutralised, but you can neutralise this chemical with this chemical. Back to square one in the pond, which some of the other treatments, once they go into the pond, you've basically got to wait the 7 days before you can do anything else. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this today and show you how it works. Hopefully we get rid of these trichodina. Right then, so I'm going to run down through a few little things that may or may not help anyone out by using a treatment, especially if you're using this video for the same reasons as what I am with a parasite and been identified that it's trichodina. Like I was saying earlier on, everyone in this industry will have a different opinion of what's right or what's wrong. If you're learning off somebody that's kept fish, their fish are alive, and what they do as treatments works, it's definitely worth listening to those type of people in the hobby. I would never take advice off someone that their fish are dying or any issues that they've had, they don't exactly know what they're talking about. The thing that I would never take advice on is by putting into a comment section on the social media page, my fish are ill, what do I do? And someone tells you to put something in your pond with no identification of what that may or may not be. Don't ever just put something in your pond without knowing why you're putting that in the pond. The PP, certain things that you need to have. You need to have some scales. Scales are vital to make sure that you get the right amount of potassium permanganate weighed out correctly when you know the exact gallonage in the pond. You also need a bucket. So I always recommend with PP, always boil a kettle with warm water. Put warm water in the bucket, let it aerate for around 20 minutes. That sort of mixes it up, because as you can see, the water goes bright purple. And then when it goes to the pond, it will also go bright purple. So all of that being said, there's a few little tips you can do prior before you actually add it to your pond. So as long as you've got a couple of days and the fish don't need immediate attention, things like turning off your fish food into the pond a couple days prior before you add any treatments will certainly help the treatment in the way of there's no extra organic load in the pond that the treatment is getting rid of to start with. Also, certain treatments say turn the UV off, certain treatments say keep it on, it doesn't matter. Any treatment I put to the pond, I turn the UV sterilising bulb off. I also turn off all of the fresh water that's run into the pond, because if you're adding fresh water to a pond, you're diluting the treatment that you've put in to originally eradicate the parasite or the right dose rate to the pond to start with. So there's a lot of yibbity yabbida there, hopefully a lot that makes sense. So with all that being said, I think it's about time to actually add this treatment to the pond. And it does say on the back of the pack how long that you should keep this treatment in there before you neutralise it, if you have to, or if you don't want to neutralise it and you just want to keep it in there. So with a treatment called potassium permanganate, and this is instructions that I'm giving that I feel confident in, as long as you guys know the exact gallonage of your pond. If you don't, do not take this advice. And I make this strictly clear that if you do not know the exact gallonage when you filled your pond originally using a water meter, so you know exactly how many litres it is, because measuring the length by the width by the depth on a pond calculator, if you've got shapes or bumps in your pond, you will never know the exact gallonage, and it's always estimated. So if it's estimated that you're doing, do what it says on the back of the pack, which it says 6.8 grams per every 1,000 gallons, or every 454 litres. Well, I'm more than confident that you can put 10 grams per 1,000 gallons into a pond, and it's more than safe enough. But like I said, this is what I do, and I'm not telling you to do it unless you know the exact gallonage. So I use 10 grams per 1,000 gallons, and I keep that for around 4 hours in the pond before I neutralise it. And if I feel the fish are completely fine, sometimes I add a bit more throughout those 4 hours. But I do not just guess this stuff, and I do not add it if I don't feel confident. And if you don't feel confident, do not do it, because I'm not taking the blame for killing anyone's fish. I've known people in the industry do 3 times the amount of what this is, and all of their fish die instantly. And one thing I'm definitely clear on is that don't use this unless you've got hydrogen peroxide. I know that sounds a little bit strict, but in this industry, with this treatment, I've got to make that clear as day. And like I said, I'm not advising you to do what I do, but this is what I'm doing today. Hopefully I didn't come across to do it this way, do it that way. All what's left to do really, I didn't mention that you need to make sure if you've got any air pumps, turn them up to the absolute maximum. The more air pumps you got, chuck them in the pond. I've chucked both of my bottom drains on full blast. They're Spindrifter aerated bottom drains. Now what's all left to do after this has been mixed up is just slowly add it into the pond. Ideally, if you've got an inlet or an outlet, just run it down through the entire depth of the pond. What I like to do is generally do all of it at once, let it mix around the pond. You'll start to see all the water go, a luminous purple. So I don't know if you can see that on camera, but pretty much instantly the water is bright purple. You can still see the koi. If I take you inside of the filtration system, and we'll have a little bit of a look in there, because it should just be going into there now. And one thing I didn't mention, all of that beneficial bacteria that you have in your filter, well, with this treatment it will kill it. It will wipe it back, and what you'll have to do is start building up your beneficial bacteria again. But it will certainly wipe it back, and you'll see it starting to turn purple in through the filter itself. You can see the water coming up through now. So all of your media, effectively, with any parasites, especially Trichodina, they love to hide out in all of the muck and all of the mess. So anything that you can disturb by doing a bit of cleaning around the back of your filters, like all of this for instance on the side, while this treatment's in the water itself, just give it all a bit of a clean. Get a brush out, clean it all, because you can see the water going purple now. It's all coming through the system. You can also see it in the drum filter as well. The last thing you want to do really is a little few things. Don't ever use this type of treatment if you haven't got the day to keep an eye on your fish. I never recommend people put the treatment in if you've got to go out. Stay on hand. If you're anything like me, a bit OCD, and you love your fish to bits, you know, I'll sit out in the garden now for the next 4 hours, in and out grabbing a pack of Star Mix Haribos or a couple of digestives to go with me coffee, certainly for one thing for sure, keep an eye on your fish. And if all of your water goes from purple to brown within 2 hours, and it's the first time you've ever used the treatment, consider adding a little bit more. If you've got any koi mates that's used it before, try to take advice off people that have used the treatment and know what they're doing with the treatment. And all that being said, if you are sat out in the garden and you are doing the same as me and you've seen this video, why don't you watch another one of my videos? See what other content that I've made. And hopefully if you're new to the channel, or if you can and you like the video, hit the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. That being said, if I don't see you in a week, I'll see you for a window. Koi Whisperer, over and out. But make sure you got that hydrogen peroxide with this stuff. Cheers.